So we've got to talk about Harvard. What's going on with this lawsuit? Harvard suing the Trump administration, claiming violation of the First Amendment because the Trump administration has frozen all of this funding. And there's an article about this over at CNN Politics. Welcome back to the channel, Culture Confederacy here. It's Monday night. Happy Monday, everybody. Now, sorry that I couldn't post anything last night. I normally post Sunday nights, but I normally do the overnight shifts on the weekends, but then I had to work 3 to 11 last night. So not only did I come in and work Friday night and Saturday night, overnight, had to come back and work 3 to 11 on Sunday. And nobody told me about it. So needless to say, I'm beat. But at any rate, let's get to this. Harvard argues the government is in violation of the First Amendment. Trump's team frames the lawsuit as a contract dispute. And thank you again for watching, subscribing, being a part of this thing called the Culture Confederacy. So if you're new, you're not going to find any fancy graphics here, epic soundtracks, pretty white camera angles. But we do talk about censorship, preserving great art, music, history, and culture. That's why I wanted to talk about this. Now, this came out today. It says here that they were back in court today for this hearing. U.S. District Judge Allison Burroughs heard oral arguments from Harvard's legal team and a lawyer for the DOJ over the school's request. She's declaring here that the funding freeze is unlawful and offered her own challenges to the government's legal rationale. The hearing marked a critical moment for what's become the flashpoint of the major clash over academic freedom, federal funding, and campus oversight, and the belief inside the White House that targeting the country's most elite academic institutions is a winning political issue for President Donald Trump. I'll tell you what my thoughts are on this in just a moment. But the president really doesn't have the authority to freeze his funding. And Harvard might actually have a leg to stand on here because of that. Because it's Congress that has power of the purse. In fact, if you look at the powers of the president and what he can and can't do, he can't make laws. He can't declare war. Again, he can't decide how federal money is going to be spent. He doesn't have power of the purse. He can't interpret the laws. That's for the Supreme Court. And he can't choose his cabinet members or Supreme Court justices without Senate approval. So Harvard actually might be in the right here. Article goes on to say Harvard lawyer Stephen Laowski, I believe it is, or Lehousky, argued Monday the government is in blatant and unrepentant violation of the First Amendment, as well as Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Cutting funding under the guise of combating anti-Semitism was, quote, arbitrary and capricious, Lehousky said. Can we get a lawyer with a regular last name? Now, he's claiming here that the cuts will devastate long-running research projects, eviscerate labs, and hurt careers. And according to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, it says here, no person in the United States shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. But here's my thought on this. The government should not be giving money to institutions like Harvard. Harvard should have to raise its own funds, raise its own revenue. So the president doesn't have the power to freeze funding. He doesn't have the power to decide how federal money should be spent, which would be part of that. He can't make laws. So this really would be something that Congress should take up, or maybe even the Supreme Court. And that's probably where this case will end up, is the Supreme Court. But these institutions should be forced to fund their own departments, raise their own revenue. And if we got back to bringing everything back to the states, this wouldn't be an issue. But because we've been so dependent on the government teat for so long, now this becomes an issue. And if Harvard is violating the First Amendment, where they're having these protests and the protests are getting violent and people are getting attacked, then maybe Congress can step in and pass a law regarding this. A no discrimination protest act or something like that. Who knows? But really, the state should be handling this. Federal government should have nothing to do with this, in my humble opinion. If you brought everything back to the states, then the state where Harvard is located, they can handle this. It should be the state government, state legislature, that decides to cut off the funding for these institutions like Harvard or Columbia, or you name the school. The Trump administration, meanwhile, says Harvard has failed to address anti-Semitism on campus in the aftermath of the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attacks on Israel, and that is acting within its authority. Well, really, it wouldn't be acting within its authority because this isn't an attack that happened in the United States. It happened in Israel. We shouldn't have anything to do with this. So it should all go back to the states, and the state legislatures, not the federal government, should be making these changes to these institutions within their state. Quote, it is the policy of the United States under the Trump administration not to fund institutions that fail to adequately address anti-Semitism in their programs. But there's nothing in the Constitution that requires the president to force these institutions, or whatever department it is in the federal government, or even let's say at the state level or local level, that requires them, the presidency or the executive branch, to regulate anti-Semitism. So, in my humble opinion, Trump is actually overstepping his bounds here as president. Now, he can go there, he can make speeches all he wants in support of, these anti-Semitic or anti-Semitic protests. He could probably do that, but he can't pass laws again. He doesn't have power of the purse. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. So I thought I'd share this with you. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. You can follow me at Instagram, #JasonComposes. Because I write music in my spare time, go to X, Culture Confederacy, Culture Confed 1 on X. Now you can find me at Substack. This is the Culture Confederacy saying peace out. And let me know what you think in the comments section below. Do you think that we should just send everything back to the states and let the state governments or these state legislators decide what funding these schools get? But let me know in the comments section below. And again, thanks for being with me. I'll catch you next time. As I said, follow me at Instagram, #JasonComposes, Culture Confederacy, or Culture Confederacy, Culture Confed 1 on X. And now you can find me at Substack. I'll catch you next time, and y'all have a great Monday. Take care.